Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Wesley Hamilton, welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm so inspired by you, as millions of others are. Disabled, but not really, is your thing. I first saw you on an episode of Queer Eye, and they were helping you out, and then you came back on and helped someone else out. Even though I have a physical disability you can't see, once you, and I'm sure you feel this way too, once you have any kind of disability physically, you are sort of automatically different than the rest of the world, the majority of the world. And I think it brings, at least for me, I don't know about you, but I never thought much about disabled people until I became disabled and understood the struggles of that. I have a hand disability, so you can't see it, but it's there physically, and it prohibits me from things. And I'm not crying a river over here, but I became so empathetic towards people with disabilities after that, really understanding on such a deep level. Tell us, what led to your disability? What is your disability? But what kind of life were you living before all of this changed your life?
Oh, absolutely. And I like how you shaped that. I don't think a lot of people are transparent enough to share that until they acquired a disability later on in life, that they really didn't focus on disability. And so, being able to share that really adds perspective to even what I'm finna share. I had no knowledge of really disability before acquiring mine. And just for people that would like to know, I am a T11, T12 incomplete spinal cord injury. It was caused by multiple gunshot wounds to my abdomen. And I give that context just to understand who I was before kind of created the situation that put me in this position. And then the life that I have now was created after. But the person that I was before my injury, I like to define it as a product of my environment. I didn't have leadership, first of all. I grew up in a fatherless home. My father was around, but he wasn't around. And there wasn't really a lot of guidance. I'm an African-American male. If a lot of people have understood the situations and complex issues within the community here in America, I was one of those people that actually lived right in the middle of it in Kansas City, Missouri. And
I feel like almost everyone I know, like my brother went to Kansas City Art Institute, and they were all held up at gunpoint. Like at some point, like it's just brutal down there. And we're from Chicago, so like they were like, "What?"
Yeah, I mean, it's the Midwest mindset. That's how I feel. Being closed in so much, and there are things and systems that are put in place to keep individuals like myself in the position and mindset that I had. I'm a firm believer of that. Education wasn't a thing that was really smiled upon. I did do well in school, but I wasn't a person that had ambition outside of school. Like I didn't aspire to go to college and get a great job. My life was, can I go to school to make my parents happy? But really, I'm just trying to figure out if my math skills are good enough to be the next Scarface. Like that,
right.
That was
how much, what kind of cartel can I run with these math skills?
Exactly. Like that was my mentality. That's all I knew. And again, I exhibited a lot of potential that probably didn't put me in a lot of real negative situations outside of just being in love with the hustle. And so when I speak of being a product of my environment, I embodied the culture that surrounded me that was closed off to the rest of the world.
tell us, so I mean, you don't have to relive the like,
Oh,
obviously
no. Oh,
the
yeah, for
horrible
sure.
experience, but what was happening at the time that you got shot? Were you just rolling through a neighborhood and it was bad? Were you involved
No,
in
not.
something? Like, what happened?
Oh, no. Great question. And of course, like, yeah, I was supposed to lead right into that. um,
Yeah.
well, I emphasized a little bit of who I was before to understand that my mindset was really to get it where I could, and I believed that I was going to be dead or in jail by the age of 21. So um, I
Nothing to
lived
lose. Yeah.
I lived that way, and of course, I didn't die at 21 or go to jail. I actually found out I was going to be a father around that age, and by 22, I was trying to do something different, get a full-time job, do all of these things. So I wasn't really necessarily living the lifestyle that I had grew up wanting to live, because I wanted to, at this point, make a difference to be a better father, especially growing up in a fatherless home. And I found out I was having a daughter. So that also hit me a little bit harder. And so I say all of that to go into, I was granted sole custody of my daughter. I think I was around the age of 23, and she was about 1.5. And a few months after that, I had broke up with the ex-girlfriend of mine. It just wasn't working out. And after being, granted sole custody of a little girl, I got to make sure everything around me is working right, and the relationships as well. And so, as a lot of people refer to relationships these days as toxic, I feel like I was living in a toxic relationship and just wanted to get out of it. And once I did try to get out of it, this individual told me that she was pregnant. And going through the stages and situations that I had just went through for my daughter, I didn't want to go through it again, just without communication. So I one morning, it was literally this day was January 14th, 2012. That's 5 days after my 24th birthday. And I am just grocery shopping, and I was grocery shopping in the area where my ex-girlfriend lived. And I decided to just go over there to talk about the baby. We had been communicating back and forth via email, because I tried to just disconnect myself from everything. And when I arrived, I seen her going into the house with another male. And that just kind of like, it just sparked a lot of emotions. I try to tell people, like, I didn't know I was in love until I felt hurt, right? Like, you just don't know, because you're trying to get rid of things. And so I had all these emotions, and there was not a confrontation between me and the male at all. But I did stay. I got out the car. Me and my ex was arguing back and forth. For me, I felt like I had a reason. You're pregnant, this is what I'm trying to do. Like, it was just very confusing. And long story short, it escalated, definitely. The male never came out. But again, the mindset that I had, truly embodied growing up was inside of me that day. And I believe that I had enough privilege and entitlement to stay where I was. I didn't have a gun with me that day, but normally I'm known to have one. And it was referred back to the guy. And so he called someone over to, basically watch him come out the house. For me, I called somebody over too, because I'm like, I want to watch him come out the house too. And unfortunately, it was
game of chicken.
And well, it got to a point where the person I called arrived first, and the guy that was inside the home, he actually knew the person I called over. So he came outside, they had a conversation. It literally squashed whatever animosity that was going on at that moment. But the disconnect was the person that was called over from the other guy hadn't received the information that the situation was de-escalated. So after the small conversation outside, I was walking back to my vehicle where I was shot the first time. And I turned around. Of course, I don't know what's happening. My body is like in shock, but it just automatically turns to the direction where something has happened. And I am literally watching and looking at someone that I've never seen a day in my life. Like until I seen this person with a gun in his hand pointed at me, I never even knew who he was. And I was able to witness the second gunshot that entered. And that's the bullet that, to me, at that day, I thought it was killing me. You know, eventually it just paralyzed me, but I was dead that day. I just knew I had died. And I remember collapsing on the ground. The person that I called over, they had a shootout. So it didn't stop with me. It was definitely like some gunfire that was going back and forth. Eventually, they was able to speed off and leave. And then, you know, there was a waiting game, all of these things. But I just remember I didn't really have a lot of regrets when I hit the ground. I had already accepted I was going to be dead or in jail by 21. I think the only thing for me was like, my daughter's not going to be able to like grow up with me. Like, you know, why did I get this responsibility to be a father and then I'm dying now? Like, is this the plan? I had those questions, but I didn't have like, man, like I need to live. It wasn't that. It was like, oh, I lived a life. Like I didn't know too many older Black men. So for me, it made sense that this is the way that we go out. And
I want to stop there and go, what a tragedy. I totally understand that. It makes sense based on what I know and what I grew up with too in downtown Chicago. So I get that, but I want to live in a different world. And I know you're trying to make it that way, but I'm sorry that was your experience because that sucks. And that is really shitty, kind of unfair disadvantage in a lot of ways that was your mindset. It's not now, but yeah, I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I was having a conversation recently where we was talking about my injury, and I said I was so stuck in a mindset that was okay with dying that I never attempted to get up. Like I didn't know that I was paralyzed until I woke up in a hospital. Like I just laid on the ground. Like people were all coming around, running around. There was one moment where I remember looking at my friend and saying, "Hey, put my legs down." And he was like, "Your legs are down." So I didn't take in the thought process that, oh, I'm paralyzed or something. Remember, disability wasn't something I truly understood.
Sure.
It was that I'm dying. Like, you know, you lose your legs first. Like, it was that process. Like, I'm like, oh man, I'm about to really die then if I can't feel my legs. Like, it never hit me. And it never hit nobody else that was around me. See, we were all products of our environment. So no one considered, let's stand up. Let's try to get you up and get in a car. No one, because it was just, no, rather say I had more life in me. Just saying, like, of course I lived and all of that. But now that I'm talking about it, I'm just thinking, like, say if I didn't have much there.
Right. The expedience of which people acted was not appropriate.
It wasn't, because it's like, everyone was just like, yeah, he's going to lay and die. But that's such a crazy reality that we live in. And that's the process, you know. And again, it went through, I did get in the ambulance. I remember finally getting to the hospital, the doctor asking me, you know, what's my name and all of these things. And I try to use a different reference. I always reference like a scene from ER, but I realized that in this society, it's like Grey's Anatomy or something.
Right.
But that's what it felt like. It felt very rushed. And I just looked at the doctor and I was like, help me. That was the first time that I considered living. And that was because I had made it to the hospital. Before that, I didn't have no hope or thought that I was going to make it or that they was even going to make it there fast enough to get me to the hospital.
You have such a positive, forward, onward and upward outlook now. But I mean, the moment, that you find out, I mean, did you feel there was hope at the beginning? Were they always like, sorry, you're not going to walk, like you are going to have to be in a wheelchair? Or was there at the beginning, like they were unsure, or was it pretty sure from the beginning that this was your fate?
There's a process that I feel like is everybody probably takes it differently. For me, I didn't like it. The process was for the first couple of weeks. Well, let's first say when I woke up, I was in ICU. I had caught pneumonia. And so I had the tube in my throat. I was not really been able to talk. I would just see family and friends crying. I didn't know what was happening. I just know I was alive. But they would keep me sedated because every time I would wake up, I try to pull the tube out my throat. And so maybe it took about 3 weeks before I knew that I really had a spinal cord injury. The process after getting into like the hospital room was that, therapists and doctors have to come in, do a range of motion, feel around, like they want to be sure. And I understand that. But it was like, oh, we're just trying to be sure. Do you feel this? We're going to come back and forth. And then after a couple of weeks, they come in and tell me, and of course, you don't know the lingo, you don't know the language, but you won't walk again, like you'll never walk again for the rest of your life. And
this was the worst day ever, kind of. And also it's almost like your mind can't believe it. Right? I mean, you'd want to believe like, no, we'll give it a year. Like this is not going to be my life.
Well, yeah, like I don't know. I think the process before made me feel like there was hope for me. And so like them coming in and out instead of just coming straight up and telling me made me feel like, okay, there is, this sounds good, but like my injury is an incomplete injury. So you have complete and incomplete. So even hearing the word incomplete, it's like, what? Right, hope. There's hope. And so I went through a couple of years of denial. Like every day I would just wake up thinking that my body was going to wake up, so I think I withered away more in depression, thinking that there was a miracle going to happen.
Versus accepting the reality.
Because of the process that just started off for the first few weeks, and I don't think that the reality hit the way that it's shared is very compassionate, and I want to say empathetic in a way, but then you go to rehab for a month and then you're pushed out to the wolves with a whole new life. So it was definitely one of those that was hard to accept because I wasn't guided into a level of confidence within this life. I was kind of pushed out just like any other, from my education and learning over the years, any other young African-American that is a survivor of gun violence. It's definitely a different norm for individuals that acquire injury the way that I did.
All of the different, we don't have to go through them. Of course, you had to learn how to like relive, right, without the use of your full capacity. And I know there was probably a big learning curve there. At what point did you realize that you could do something with this? But then I guess I also want to backtrack and ask, at least in my experience, it feels very lonely until you can connect with someone who has your disability. It's almost like the people who've been in a plane crash. They don't really want to talk to anyone unless it's a person who's also experienced the same thing. And I know that I felt less alone when I met other people who had hand disabilities and we talked about it. It made me feel so much better. I'm just curious about that introduction in your life, meeting other people that are disabled, and then also the time of which you realize you could use this experience to propel you. You do have the confidence, you gained it, and to help others.
Yeah, so it kind of goes a little bit where I kind of pivot back to who I used to be to now. And what I mean by that is like when I acquired my injury, at that time, I was what medical physicians would refer to as overweight. I was about 230 pounds. I'm 5'5", 5'4".
So that's pretty obese for 5'5". Yeah.
I'm 5'4", but 5'5" on a good day. Okay.
I'm
But
willing to
yeah,
give you that extra inch on that one. Yeah.
right. But again, I joke about it now, but I thought that I was a big boned living. You grow up in, food deserts and things. Wellness isn't on the top tier, right? So I never had an issue with my weight before. But now that I'm in this wheelchair, not only do I have the situation of being paralyzed, now I don't even believe that I can lose weight, and I start gaining it. So I'm about 250 pounds. I'm living in an inaccessible home. Like all of these barriers that come once something changes, right? And so I ended up, after the end of my first year of depression and all of these things, I lost hope, and I ended up getting something they call a pressure ulcer. And that's just the best way to put it. You sit too long, you can acquire a sore when you don't have no muscle density and all of these things. And if you don't treat it, it could become worse. It can turn to an infection, put you on bed rest, all of that. Well, I was one of those people that were so much in denial, right? I thought I was going to be a miracle. I was still going to walk again. So that mindset was still there. I was overweight. I didn't know how to exercise. I had never ate healthy, or what people call healthy or clean. That just wasn't for me. And so by the middle of my second year, I was put on bed rest. And so life just had a very hard turn for me. And the value of life, I know, come back with a positive mindset to it, but the value of life, I didn't, at this point, my daughter's about 3.5, 4. I'm feeling the worst ever. I'm on bed rest, but she has this ambition to swim. She has this ambition to go to the park. She's a kid. And so I think the shift for me was, I have to realize that I have this responsibility. I have a responsibility as a parent. I don't care about anything else. The biggest thing for me is that I have to be strong for her. If I show an example of weakness, no matter the odds, no matter the circumstances, then what does that create? And if she's in the other room, right? Now, for some people that have a disability and are parents, they have co-parenting, all of that. I didn't. I'm a full-time single father that has sole custody of a little girl. And I just became paralyzed. I had to become somebody I never thought I could be. And the first thing I had to do was get healthy. And I remember asking the doctor, just really, how do I do that? What's the direction? They told me to add more protein to my diet. My knowledge back then was a double quarter pounder with cheese. What is protein? So I got worse. I ended up being on bed rest for 21 hours a day. I was only able to get up 3 hours. And I started to realize that me looking in the mirror and dealing with this lack of confidence of being overweight, these health issues, I felt disgusted with myself. I hated looking in the mirror. This was not a life for me, and it's crazy to talk about this knowing the life I have now, but it was just so rough. And I took up a dietitian course at a local community college. And even though school and all of that wasn't the biggest thing in my mind, I was very smart in school. And I always wanted to try to grab some trade or something just to be able to have something behind me, even if it was trying to please my parents, right? And so I went to school. It was about let's say a 45-minute commute from my house. And so I would get to campus. I would do campus for about 2 hours, get back home, get on bed rest, do online classes. But when I opened that book on nutrition, it changed my life. No one had ever just educated me on food, right? And now I'm at this place where the doctors are telling me that food is really the only thing that's going to help me heal. And so I had to learn. But as I'm learning, I'm getting excited because now it's telling me, oh, you've been drinking Dr. Pepper all this time. Well, have you seen how much sugar is in your Dr. Pepper? Right? Like it was just really giving me the knowledge that I started to remove things out, add better things in. And by January 2015, 3 years after my injury, I'm having my sixth surgery, but my last surgery. And I get on a hospital bed. Mind you, I'm in denial this whole time about any changes that are happening. One, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing all these things, but I'm still on bed rest. I'm still going through the same process, but my mind is clearing up. I'm getting some self-help books. Like everything is starting to change. I get on a hospital bed, and this is the first time I'm weighed because as a wheelchair user, can't get on a scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I am 135 pounds.
I mean, and you look amazing. Anyone can go see Wesley on social media, which is the perfect weight. I mean, again, we care about body percentage fat and other things, not just weight, but it's kind of the perfect fighting weight for someone your height.
Yeah, seriously. And, I think for me, at that moment, I wasn't even at the hospital. I had 6 more weeks to heal on a specialized bed, all of this. Like I was cool with the bed baths and all because I had done something I could never do, walking.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that at this moment, I had confidence. I didn't know what confidence was until this moment. It made me start to reflect on the mindset that I had growing up. And even though I lived in circumstances, was it the lack of confidence that I had that didn't make me go out to be more? And now, even though I'm facing these circumstances and still living in the same communities, I'm ambitious to become more because I've done something that my mind allowed me to do, not my body. Right.
Well, and what I love about that is, being a confidence expert, you are proof of the following point. You generate it from within. You can generate it from within. You're not always a victim of circumstance. You can get out of it if you put the attention to it, which you did. You did the work. You bought books. You were like, all right, let me fucking take a look at some stuff, man. I mean, and that putting one step, just going one little action at a time, you can absolutely generate it. So I love that you said that because you are an example of someone who's been able to generate it from within in a scenario where most people would lose confidence.
Yes. And that's where disabled but not really was bred. Honestly, I knew that I was disabled. I mean, everything around me was referenced to that. But in that hospital bed, at that moment, I realized that disability is a limitation, that it stops you from doing things. And I wasn't being stopped by the disability. It actually had put me in a position to do more things than any physical ability had allowed me to do.
I love that. I feel I say something in my second book on confidence when I talk about my disability, which is I'm not happy and successful despite my disability because of it. It's because of it.
Yes.
It actually was one of the biggest gifts. At the time, it felt like a curse, horrible. Why is this happening to me? And it wasn't until later that I realized, and I know people, it's weird because I'm sure people ask you the question, like, if you go back in time, would you change it? It's a tough thing. You realize some people are like, well, of course I want my legs, or somebody's like, well, of course I'd want full use of my arms out. But at least from my personal experience, I would say I would do it all over again based on the person I became through it. Do you feel that way too?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I could not be who I am today without living the life I lived before my injury and not going through the things that I did, like within my injury. Like all of that created who I am. And without that, I could not be who I am.
How's your daughter doing?
Oh, she's good. She's 13 now. So yeah. So now we're working at the teenage stage, and
that's right.
again, but that's also just a learning factor. And I get to be that example, especially how life has been now. So,
what a great role model you are now that you didn't have. Way to change the story of your family history. And tell us about Disabled But Not Really and what you offer and help people with. And everyone can donate as well to your organization. Tell us about the things that you guys do.
oh, absolutely. So, of course, when I started Disabled But Not Really, it literally got established in that hospital bed on that 6 weeks of healing. And when I first initially started, I just want people with disabilities to have a healthy and active lifestyle, because that's how I felt right at that moment. But leading into the next couple of years of trying to figure out what we wanted to do, I became an adaptive athlete. So I competed in wheelchair bodybuilding and CrossFit for 3 years. And experiencing that, I got to be around a lot of other disabilities outside of my own. And it as you shared earlier, it grasped this level of empathy. But it also allowed me to expand and understand that we could serve so many more people than just people in wheelchairs. And so now our focus is really helping individuals that acquire an injury to find their identity after the injury. Mm. And our programs are based on wellness. So mental, physical, and emotional well-being. We have a 12-week cohort called the Help Me Fit Challenge. It's completely free. And the individuals come in, they do 8 weeks of physical fitness training with a licensed trainer, nutrition education. We do nutritional seminars, meal prep seminars, and then we have a confidence part piece at the end where we bring them in and do a professional photo shoot and a video interview. Nice. And the goal with that is, after me acquiring my injury, becoming successful, I wasn't prepared for the cameras. And when I realized that in this world and society, unfortunately, there's a lot of inspiration porn. There's all these things when it comes to disabled bodies, because it's becoming more visible, right? Representation, all of that. And if we're creating, so our pillars with Disabled Not Really is courage, confidence, and competence. And if we're creating individuals that are full of confidence, then we're creating the next world of leaders. And if we're going to do that, we don't want to throw them out to the wolves when it comes to interviews and things. So we created first. So at the end of our program, after you go through all of these things, we do this professional photo shoot. And the goal is how you want the world to see you. Because I never had a good picture of me until I was confident enough to look in that camera and say, this is how I want you to see me. And so we focus on that image. And that's our Help Me Fit Challenge. Outside of that, we do a lot of social programs and really educating, some DEI consulting, event consulting, just really amplifying the message that disabled bodies should be in society. And if the only thing, and there's not a problem with the body as much as there's a problem with the access. So we do work around trying to make things more accessible, but we also do work with the individual to allow them to understand that despite the lack of access, they can create it.
What I love about the building the confidence, and a few things. First of all, something you said where you're like, I didn't think it was possible in a wheelchair to lose weight. And everyone listening who's followed me for a while knows, through my work in paleo primal ancestral health, you can sit on your couch and lose weight if you eat right. It's 80% of your body composition is pretty much what you put in there. And as you should, if you're in a wheelchair or struggling with an after surgery, because of what Wesley, how it helps with inflammation, right? So you're helping the healing and the process. It's the best way to, and also like, what else are you going to do? Get on it. Right. So it's very possible if you're in, and I always tell everyone, if you're morbidly obese right now or something, no one's asking you to go join a boot camp. It's like at the minimum, start with getting rid of the shitty oils, then maybe getting rid of some of the bad grains, then maybe incorporating more protein.
It's the baby step.
Eventually you're going to have the energy where you're going to maybe want to get up and walk to the mailbox if you have the ability. So you can do it. Even I have a friend who cured herself of rheumatoid arthritis, but she was relegated to a wheelchair before she stood up and walked. And she lost 40 pounds sitting in that wheelchair by just adjusting her diet. So, just want to let everyone know that what Wesley did is possible for everyone, whether or not you are in a wheelchair. And then what I love about your confidence there is it seems that especially people who have a visible physical disability, like a cane or particularly a wheelchair, might live a life where people kind of look away, they don't want to see, or they're avoiding. And so I love that because it's bringing them to the forefront and that confidence of their appearance. And again, like you said, how you want the world to see you, probably one of the most important things you guys do other than the wellness. The two go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, again, I love the foundation that I've created is because it comes from experience. I didn't have direction. I didn't have positive representation when it came to a disabled body that was similar to mine. I didn't see the fitness world. I literally put myself out there to be a sponge to all these things that was being provided, but most people didn't know about. And then, as a person with a disability, as you may know, there's a lot of, there's intersections within disability, but then there's also a lot of separation. So as a person with a spinal cord injury, well, most people only just invite me to spinal cord injury groups. But for me, I like to go to the amputee group. I might want to go to the MS group. And the point is that when people can see others that are going through struggles that are different than theirs, it empowers them to understand that I'm not alone. That's and right. That someone could be worse off than me, but are stronger than me. And one of those things was the importance of our Help Me Fit Challenge. It's if you have a physical disability, if you identify with a physical disability, or you have some type of limitation and you want to push forward, then our program is for you. I'm not saying it's for people with spinal cord injury. I'm not saying it's just for people with that are amputees. I'm saying that I want to bring a community of people that are all different, that can come together and push themselves together and create a community around that. And what we've done is find that it has created a bigger social circle. And now, say you go out, we do social events. So say we go to Act Strong. You're not just going with 20 wheelchairs anymore. You're mixing it up. We might have someone that's visually impaired, right? We might have someone that is literally off of maybe they have autism, right? So now we're creating it where that we can make sure that it's sensory. They're not having the sensory upload. So how do we make this environment better? But again, you're not looking at the person as something different anymore. And what I see is that when you put people in a position like that, they start to see the human first. And then everything else comes after. And so that's another important part with us in the organization. And again, I always say, it's just experience led. I'm not going to teach anyone anything that I know didn't serve me. I know I didn't have confidence before. Now you can see me on an ad with Tommy Hilfiger. Why? Right? Because I understood the value of allowing me to create the narrative that I want the world to see.
So empowering. I have a couple of friends who have some disabilities. One of my friends has my hand disability, which is chronic tendonitis, and you can't see it, right? And I'm fully mobile, so you don't see a struggle, which has been a little bit of a tough thing because people are very more empathetic to someone who's walking down the street who doesn't have an arm, right? It's like the visual. And so for me, I know I've had thoughts over time, and I'm sure almost every disabled person has had this, because at least the friends that I've talked to have said it, which is, you do so much as someone who is probably considered what percentage disabled by the state, maybe 60 or more based on your legs. I know for me, I was rated at 40%, probably because of the upper extremities. And when you see it's sometimes hard when you're disabled and you're doing all this stuff, and then you see like able-bodied people either complaining or I had a friend at work who's having a disability issue, and the employees weren't doing the stuff, and he's like, oh my God, they all have arms, and like they're not like, I don't even have arms, like can't use my arms, and I'm doing all this shit. Like you start to like, there are some moments, not where you like become prejudiced against able-bodied people, but where you start to be like, man, you know, and I just want to point that out. Like, look at all that you do, right? For someone who's able, and let that be an
Yeah.
inspiration to everyone else out there who is able-bodied. Wesley and I have been doing a bunch of shit up in here. Okay, you guys can get it together. If we're doing it, if he's doing it in a wheelchair and I'm doing it with lack of arms and be able to produce as much as I'm able to, anyone can do it, right? And I think that that's also really inspiring too, to see people who have had everything against them, particularly something with like your disability, because that's involving ramps and doorways and things that I don't have to deal with as a disabled person. But yeah, I mean, it's almost like you should be so proud of yourself, and also to everyone else, get on it before
No,
you get
like,
a disability that motivates you to do it.
but that's the thing. I feel like at least the people, when you are able to wake up every morning and the first thing you have to accept is your own adversity, it allows you to become more powerful in the world. And most people wake up and take advantage of their abilities without being able to accept, without giving grace. Like when when I wake up every morning, I have to wake up and relive the fact I can't walk. It don't matter that I accepted it yesterday. It don't matter that yesterday was great. If I slept wrong, I wake up and it's going to let me know I slept wrong. And I'm going to have to understand, do I want to be defeated by this today, or am I going to accept it? Most people they don't give themselves grace. I'm grateful for all that I have, and I'm going to use this to make myself better. So when life hits them, it's like, oh, you're completely defeated. Like you said, like there's people, our family members and things like, oh, my ankle hurt or my leg hurt, or and I'm like, well, at least you got them, right?
That's
Like,
right. Yeah,
like,
right.
and but I think that, and people will complain to a whole nother level, and you've got to a point where you don't complain anymore, but you still feel it,
Yeah,
right?
there
Like
you
you're,
go. By the way, that's a very good point. People who, so because people would say to me like, "Well, I don't hear you complain," and you're like, "Well, then I'd be complaining a lot." And you learn sort of as
yes,
someone with a disability to sort of just, you become used to whatever the thing is. So you're, unless it needs immediate morphine and you got to call out to someone, you kind of live with it. And so people then don't hear about it. You're like, well, yeah, but would you want me to? Would you really want me to sit here and complain every day about this or that, or my arm's having a flare up this week? I mean, in general, you kind of learn people don't want to hear it. And frankly, it kind of, again, it puts one in a victim state. I will say though,
yeah.
and I don't know if you have moments, but um, I still have moments sometimes when I have bad flare ups, when they happen, where it's a tough moment. I still have to go through a reacceptance in those moments, and it's been 20 something years. And it's not that every day I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I have this thing, but it comes up occasionally. It does, like being able, for example, I'm a very helpful person. I'm a team player, and a lot of contributing to a team involves hard labor, stuff with your hands, right? Unless you're just using your voice. And so you feel bad that you like can't help out at a party, or you help out and then you hurt yourself because you'd rather help than have to explain that you can't. And there's kind of these moments there. So I don't know if you still have moments sometimes. I know that I do, even though I've still fully accepting it, but I still have some moments, and there's moments when I cry about it. It's rare, but there's moments when, and perhaps it's because I'm triggered from the past and the situation or the story from a long time ago, but I still have moments. It's just that the moments are quicker and they are onward and upward. I don't simmer in them too long. What about you?
No, I mean, I think that every day you have something that kind of makes you look back and say, if this wasn't my situation, life could be different.
Right.
And it makes you have to, like you said, reaccept. Like, I mean, for me, I could be going somewhere and the elevator don't work. It's a barrier, right? Like now I can't get here. Now I can't do this activity. Maybe
Right.
some days my body isn't as physically able, so I have to not, be a dad as like I want to. Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you have moments. But I believe that one, I use my pain as my strength. And so I definitely go through a lot of spasms and things like that with my body, but it strengthens me. That's the mentality that I've created. But then outside of that, I think when I'm going through those moments, I don't know. I have this awareness that I just laugh about it. It's crazy, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
I literally I find humor in it. Like, oh man,
Yeah.
you just trying to take me down again, ain't you? Like, like
Mm-hmm.
it's never it's never a place that I would stay. And again, relationships, there are all type of things that I make me have to realize like, okay, this disability puts layers to a lot of things.
Sure.
And so, but I'm never, like you said, like I never stay in that place. I'm not stuck in a place because my life wouldn't be what it is without this. And I cannot fix someone else's ignorance. I can only allow them and even society to continue to see me being able to go and live through it. And I think that that's the important for anyone that's going through things and have to reaccept and things, is that things don't change until we actually put ourselves out there. Someone has to be a vessel to be able to let the world see what they're missing, and then allow the world to accept what they might have to accept themselves some point of their life.
I love it. I mean, we'll put everything in the show notes, but I just want to say it right now. Everybody, please go donate to disabledbutnotreally.org, and also check out the Help Me Fit challenge that Wesley spoke about. If you know anyone who's recently been disabled or is struggling with any of the things we're talking about, please direct them towards disabledbutnotreally.org. Wesley, as we're wrapping this up, what are some thoughts, words of wisdom that you have not already shared with us that you might want to leave with our audience about this topic or your work, or if someone is struggling with a new disability?
Yeah, I think, all disability aside, as just a human being, like I think that the beauty of my message is I didn't just overcome a disability. I overcame a mindset that was acquired before my disability that disabled me within society of becoming more. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people might not face disability for some years, but please be aware it's not if, but when we will all have one, or experience one. And the key to overcoming anything is knowing yourself. It's nothing more than that. Like if you listen to my story, I lacked so much confidence. I didn't want to look in the mirror. I didn't want to do anything. But once I understood that it was up to me to change the trajectory of my life, no matter if it was drinking more water to see what impact that does, it gave me power. It gave me strength of just knowing what I was able to do, what I wasn't able to do, and not allowing the things I was not able to do control me. And my message is know yourself first and fall in love, not only with the things you can do, but fall in love with things that make you different. After I took ownership of my wheelchair and realized that it was a part of me, I was able to take more control of my life. And that meant if my wheelchair can't get in, I must not supposed to be there, right? Like,
That's right. Guess it's not happening today. The elevator said, right. Yeah, well, that's a way to turn around a situation, and also very like sort of Danish Nordic way of looking at like expectations. Like, oh well, it didn't work out. Instead of sit here and bitch and cry about it, it's just that wasn't meant to be. What's the next thing now?
Yeah, and seriously, again, it's just knowing what you're willing to face, what you're willing to embrace, and what you're willing to create. Once you know yourself, you understand what you're able to do, and you push yourself more. I believe so. Like I never knew myself till I was in a wheelchair, and I wouldn't have created the love I have for life, the empathy I have for others. I know we didn't go too far in depth, but even for those that might want to understand, like where this place of peace and that I am in, I was even able to meet the person that put me in this position and give him grace.
I was going to ask you about that. I'm glad you brought up the forgiveness. That's tough. How'd that
Yeah.
go?
Well, that's the thing. I just I know myself. And so to simplify the situation, yes, I met the man I met the man that shot me. We did it on national TV. So if you ever want to just check out, it's on Queer Eye season 4, episode 2. Boom. How did it all happen? I think it goes into, once I understood the value of my life, I realized that the man that was trying to take my life actually gave me life. And if I was able to continue to live, and I've created the reality I have now after my injury. Was my injury something? Yes, it was done in a negative way, but was it something that I should constantly dwell on? See, I would be a victim if I dwelled on it. But for me, as I shared the situation, I understood that my actions and emotions played a major part in the position I am in. And most people are not willing to take accountability because they are a victim to something. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was able to take accountability, and taking that accountability freed myself before I even was able to face the person that put me in this position. And so when I faced them, there was no animosity. There was awareness that, hey, in a sense, I couldn't control what you did, but I could have controlled that situation where you never arrived. Mm-hmm. And if that is for me to understand, then it is for you to believe and know that it's okay to feel down if you feel some type of way for what you did to me, but do not hold that over your head for the rest of your life, because you actually gave me life. And I appreciate you more than I could ever have hate in my body for you. And none of that would have happened.
That's amazing for him, I'm assuming too, right? The person who has committed this atrocity, to hear that from someone they might have spent the rest of their life feeling awful and guilty about, and they may still have some of that too, but to offer them that.
Yeah. And again, I just think that for me, it was just the awareness, the understanding. And I just knew that, I think, and I shared it when I met him, if the shoe was on the other foot, I would have did the same thing that day with that mentality. And I think the world would be better if people took more accountability and knew themselves. And for me to know myself, I knew who I was that day. And I know who I am today. And if I knew that, then I could be aware and strong enough to be able to face someone that did something to me based off the actions that created the situation.
I love it. Wesley, you're such an inspiration. Disabledbutnotreally.org is the website. Thank you so much for all the work that you do and for sharing your wisdom and your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
And for everyone else, we'll see you next week. Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.